As a professional, there comes a time in your career where you're inevitably faced with the following questions. Is this the right career for me? Am I happy and fulfilled with the work that I do? Is this the purpose of my life? And the answer might be a resounding yes. But if the answer happens to be no, the question that then follows is, what other jobs can I do as an architect? I get asked this question quite a lot, especially by foreign architects who have qualified outside of the UK and who don't have the right to use the title here in the UK and don't want to necessarily go through that long process of converting their diplomas into the British equivalent. I myself made recently a pretty bold move, despite holding the title architect here in the UK, and I'll tell you why in this video. So whether you're in this situation or just curious about alternatives, or you think that you could add value in different ways like I did, keep watching. Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm an architect, recently lecturer, sustainability specialist, and on this channel, we explore architecture principles and design strategies that help designers create a more sustainable world. So if this is up your alley, make sure you subscribe. An architect, through their career, develops a considerable number of skills that can very easily be transferable to other jobs. When you think about it, in the same project, an architect can do research, site analysis, write reports, draw, present and public speak, coordinate between other consultants, discuss regulations and policy, teach and mentor junior colleagues, work with software, look at sustainability, price and do cost control, inspect construction work, do some interior design, post on social media, and the list goes on. Each one of these individually can be an actual job. So I'm not going to give you a list of all alternative career choices because it's impossible to list them all. But I can give you some example that I have divided in 4 categories. First category is a specialty in the private sector, the 9-to-5 private. So that's essentially taking one of the skills that I've just listed and specializing in just that. The first one that I have thought about doing previously myself is a sustainability consultant. And I have an architect friend who is doing it right now. And that involves working with the client and the design team to measure and improve the sustainability performance of a certain building. Essentially, one of your tasks could be modeling a building in some sort of energy modeling software, running some analysis, and then making recommendations for design changes and technologies to help that building meet building regulations or other sorts of certifications like BREEAM or LEED. The starting salary in the UK, like most professional jobs, is pretty low, but the career progression is very good and very similar to one in an architecture practice. There will inevitably be deadlines, so the stress can be relatively high, but there's not much risk and the responsibility on a construction project is relatively low. The second example is a design coordinator. I have an architect friend who is doing that at the moment and who is working for a contractor, and essentially what his job is getting information from all consultants on a construction project and literally just making sure that they are coordinated, that the overall design meets regulations, etc. So that can be, for example, making sure that the mechanical equipment doesn't clash with the structure. This is part of what an architect does, but sometimes, depending on how the project has been procured, that coordination somehow doesn't happen and some things get missed. You can clearly see how this kind of job can save a construction company quite a lot of money and certainly grief from disputes caused by mistakes and inconsistencies in the design, which can be picked up earlier before it's too late. Salary-wise, it's pretty good. Generally, working for a construction company pays much better than working for an architecture firm, certainly a small architecture firm. But my friend does quite a lot of traveling and he's very often on site. So the stress levels can be quite high. There's quite a lot of responsibility in this kind of jobs. The third example is a BIM manager. One of my classmates from architecture school back in Morocco is now a BIM manager for a pretty big company. And BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. The job consists of many things, including implementing tools and software for BIM, for example, Revit in a company, facilitating communication and collaboration between project stakeholders, ensuring that the projects in an architecture company comply with the BIM standards and procedures, providing necessary training on standards, and so on. The salary is pretty good compared to an architecture practice. It's a bit techy, so we need to, enjoy that sort of work. But the salaries can average around 50k, which is not bad. The fourth example is an interior designer. I know a couple of people who have completely switched from architecture to interior design, and they seem to enjoy it. The job, as you surely know, consists of transforming indoor spaces into functional and visually appealing areas. You'll be working on the functionality of a space, but also on the aesthetic appeal of a space, so picking colors and materials, and also picking furniture and art where it's appropriate. The salaries, depending where you work, are pretty similar of architect salaries. And the hours are long. The liability, I'm guessing, is not as bad as for an architect, but there are still very tight deadlines, so it can be quite stressful. The second category is the public sector, or what I call a 9-to-5 public. I know a couple of my colleagues who now work for the council or work for charities like the National Trust. But one example in this category is becoming a planning officer. So a planning officer's job is to be looking at pre-applications, inquiries, and assessing planning applications and appeals. You'd be working with both the public but also with external agents, architects, and engineers and council members, etc. Again, the pay might not be brilliant. The contract might not be permanent. There's a lot of financial pressure on the councils lately, and there are very tight deadlines. But a job with the public sector usually offers a little bit more benefits compared to, say, working for a small architecture firm. And there's that satisfaction of contributing to positive change in your local area. The third category is high education, or what I like to call the flexi 9-to-5. I call it a flexi 9-to-5 because there's no billable time per se. So you don't necessarily need to map the time that you work against a specific project where you need to make a profit, like in an architecture firm. It's an outcome kind of work. So for example, you need to advance your research by a certain time, or you need to prepare your lectures for specific dates in the calendar. But how you manage your day-to-day is actually up to you. Working in higher education could involve doing research and doing a bit of teaching as part of your contract, or your main job could be just teaching and potentially leading on modules, and creating content for lectures, and overall just enhancing the student experience. So I myself made this move recently, where I joined the Department of Architecture and the Built Environment in Nottingham Trent University in the UK, and I've been working over the past few years in redesigning the Sustainable Technology module, which I am leading at year 2, and it will be for construction managers and quantity surveyors. I've always been interested in teaching, but I always thought that I needed a PhD to get into academia, and I was never really sure whether I was ready to do a PhD, or even if I was interested to do a PhD. At the end of 2023, I started this YouTube channel, and I was really enjoying exploring software and AI, and exploring sustainability issues in the built environment, and communicating those through educational content on YouTube. That really became the highlight of my day. It also happened at a time where the industry was not doing really well. It's still not doing really well because of the economic situation we're in at the moment. And I wasn't finding the projects I was working on very engaging, and it just overall felt like it was time for a change. Then this opportunity at NTU came up, and it felt like my profile really fit the job description. It felt like I could be a good fit for the role. So I applied, and I got the job, and I couldn't be happier. The fourth category is creatorpreneur / flexi workweek. I call this the flexi workweek, but it doesn't mean that there isn't not much work involved. Actually, creatorpreneurs and freelancers often work more than people in a 9-to-5 job, especially in the beginning when they're trying to establish themselves. And also because often, if this is their only source of income, they need to make sure that they're earning enough to sustain themselves. But basically what I mean by this category is any creative work that you might fancy that can make you some money. It can be specializing in designing exhibitions for museums, or doing some graphic design or personal branding, and so on. It could also be designing and selling courses online. A few examples of this are Oliver from upstairs, who is an architect and teaches how to use InDesign or how to make isometric diagrams. Balkan architect, who is the absolute reference for learning Revit. This other Canadian architect, Dami Lee, that I really like, quit her job recently to focus on making videos on YouTube, and she has over 1 million followers now. And there are loads of other creators that are doing this creative work either as a side hustle to try to build something out of it and potentially monetize it, or they're using social media as a way to market their service, which is really smart. The cool thing about this kind of job is that you can just start it on the side without quitting your 9-to-5 job and just see how you like it. So there you have it. Architecture training gives you a range of valuable skills that you can use anytime to pivot your career. Sometimes we can hold on tight to what we think is an ideal career, and we don't really stop to think about how we feel about it. Do we really like it? We want to be an associate by 32 and a director by 40 and earn this much by 42. We compare ourselves to our peers, and we have these standard off-the-shelf timelines that we think everybody should be on. It's important to remember that each one of us is on their own timeline. Each one of us has a different story and something valuable to offer to this world. And we owe it to ourselves to take the time to explore what that is and share it with the world, and hopefully do so while enjoying ourselves. If you're still wondering what that is, make sure you watch the video up here where I introduce a simple method to design a career you love as an architect. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.